Alright, so moving on to the VaporWave, which is this guy. Uh, it is actually one of the elements down here, and I pretty much just copied it and moved it up. Because I liked it here, and I'm like, just, it's super easy to, copy. And basically how I do it is a particle sim. And so I emit off of particles. And you can see I'm starting at 0, and then I do a time offset. And so I'm just doing some bullshit like this. Like, it's super simple, like, maybe I got a little bit lazy. This is maybe looking like I got a little bit lazy. And so what I also do is I cut it in half because I don't want to do the whole thing. What I did is I cut it in half and then I spun it around and I rotated it. And that just allowed me to cut down on sim time. And because you can't really, you can't really see, because basically it cuts off here and then sort of like behind here, and so it works relatively well. You can't see that there's two volumes in there. So that's pretty much how I did it. And this is a little bit, I was experimenting with this of how to track the object. This geo track right here is resizing my blocks automatically. I had some problems with clipping, and the grid wasn't keeping to size with this. So during this project, I got really familiar with the resize tools, and I learned a bunch about that too. And you can do some really cool stuff. And the missile trail that does all that fancy resizing stuff that you saw in the beginning, I actually did that. That was like last. That was an afternote. I originally had this as a, here it is. The original as a, this was a particle trail, and it was just, it wasn't doing it. And so I learned some stuff, and then I went back and I revisited, and then I really learned how to control where to put grids and how to resize them and to control them. So this was sort of the start at that. So as you can see, I also did some wavelet stuff in here. I may not be using it though. It may have worked here. Here's the gas. I'm starting to do this with the gas field wrangle. I can just add in velocity. Now this V at P, this is a little bit different. That V at P is in local space to the grid, I found. And so what you're looking at here, I think it's sort of wrong. It's working, but it's not working. It's basically a mistake happens, but it still gets the job done. And so these disturb nodes, I started using these, and I have a control. I make a control field. Here's my control. And what I've started to do here is I make a, let's see if we can see it. There it is. So I make a noisy field like this to put my gas disturbance through. And it's called control. And I generate it here, so you can see I see F. I basically do a bunch of noise functions, and then F at control equals my noise field, which is in here. And then these gas turbulences, I have the cutoff really at 10 and the disturbance pretty high, and so I want disturbance going pretty much through everything. And then so it's going through the white part of the control field. And this gas disturbance, it's a little bit different, and it's going through the other part of the control field. Or is it? Did I remap the control field? Yes, yeah, the control field's remapped. So it's going through the black parts. And this is something that I'm really liking, and I'm probably going to be continuing the workflow. I find this is just about as powerful as the bubble field, and it's way, 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 way cheaper. So this is just a force to like sort of push the fluid out. This tracks the geometry, the size of the grid to that geometry. So that is pretty much the VaporWave, and then I think I use the wavelet on this. I'm sure I do. So the wavelet, you pretty much just grab all your stuff. I need to spend more time with it. I don't think you need wavelet anymore, but it gives it a little bit sharper. My soup, Dave Stevens, was pointing out that he ran some tests on the wavelet and you really get some crisp detail. So he really likes it. So I started experimenting with here. I'll probably continue to do so in the future. Let me just hit cancel. This is ridiculous. So basically you take your stuff and you just copy it into this gas up res. And the noise is, I'm going to have to spend some time with this. I can't really give you advice to just say, you know, you got to play with it. But you pretty much copy everything and then you increase your grid size. And then you run your wavelet. And so as you can see, you know, I spin it around, I copy it and I rotate it, and then I write it out. Let's see. I write it out to there. And what I do on here is I had some problems rendering. It was just like halting. But then I went in and I started doing these. So you see these occasionally. This is when I had trouble getting my renders. They would just stop for some reason. And this is what I'm doing is this is a procedural, a delayed load, and I point it to that file that I wrote out. And what it does is on here, under render, you have a procedural shader. And so I point to that. So at render time, it loads the BGOs in. So normally if I hit render, what happens is it takes more memory because it takes the Houdini scene, it translates it into an IFD, and then it renders it. And with this method, you sort of have a lighter IFD, and so it uses less memory. And then on render time, when that bucket hits, it loads in that BGO geometry. And so I was getting successful renders after I started doing this. So it looked like I was having a memory problem. So procedural shader, have a delayed load here, and then all that your delayed load does is it points to the geometry that you wrote out. And then whenever this thing is, you know, I have it referenced here, but it doesn't matter. I could have this on null, and then it's still going to render because this is the procedural render, the procedural shader here. So it's a super handy thing in Houdini that saves you a lot of rendering. It saves you disk space and it saves you memory on your render. So this is super handy to do, and it can be condensed down into an OTL like this process, which I recommend you do. Alright, this was a little bit too long, but thank you for watching.